Welcome, everybody. It's ZuTime. My name's Alan Andres, the founder of ZuCas and ZuCoins. Wonderful to be back with everybody. It's been 64 days since we last had our get-together and chat. So I'm very, very happy and pleased to be back on deck. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride over that period. So before I start and do all things ZuCoins, which is what we're all here to learn about and hear about what's been happening, I've titled today's episode Never Give Up. And there's a couple of big reasons for that. Firstly, everybody, I just want to pay tribute to my beloved, beautiful wife, Joy. Many of you would have seen and heard that after battling cancer, terminal cancer for 2.5 years, Joy sadly passed away on the 12th of June this year. And it's fair to say that having been with Joy for 39 years and married for 36, it's very, very hard to get used to when that person's not around, of course. But I just want to say as a tribute that certainly she's the most courageous, incredible, inspirational person that we had the ability to be with and share, particularly in the last couple of years, where we did a lot of things together as a family. So the never give up courage comes from that, and what Joy's inspired us to live our lives and keep moving forward. So that's for my daughter Natalie and Jennifer, of course Matthew, our 3 grandchildren, which is Hunter and Paige and Winston, who miss their nanny dearly. But Joy, fighting spirit. In 2019, she was given 3 months to live. And of course, she, through her Christian faith, believed in, obviously, that there was an afterlife through Jesus, but more importantly as well, obviously that's pretty significant with keeping going, that she wanted to fulfill many of the things that she saw as milestones and extend that life as much as she could to be with us. And I can assure you, which you won't see in the cancer brochures, but it's one thing to be fighting cancer, it's another the excruciating pain that she went through the chemo, the sickness, the bad days far outweighed the good days in terms of her own personal health. So this particular episode is in tribute to Joy and that lasting legacy. And I guess on a more happier note with that, during the journey with Joy and our family, she always had this meticulous way of keeping lists and jobs to be done. And she certainly left me with a couple of objectives in our lives to do that. And one of them, of course, was her dying wish was to die in our house. And despite the government wanting to evict us in the last 12 months, despite knowing full well of her condition, she fought through the courts as well. And since the property had been refinanced, she had her dying wish to die in our house with her beloved gardens around and family and friends. So I want to thank all those that have their prayers and thoughts for Joy. It's been overwhelming, and the legacy that she's left is inspiring in the sense that she wanted, on a business front, given the attitude of the government, that by whatever means, I will certainly be pursuing those issues and legal issues that she wanted to the nth degree. I can assure you of that. That's one of the great dying wishes she had. And to say to everybody within the ZuCoin family that our objectives there is to build, to make it happen, and to deliver globally what we set out to do with ZuCoins for those reasons. So thank you very much to everybody and all your good wishes on that front. The other little never give up that came out of that, of course, was on the Saturday, that's the 11th of June, prior to Joy passing on the Sunday. She wanted to see that her beloved horse that she's in with all of us, Alligator Blood. And let me say that that's an inspirational story in itself of never give up. Despite the naysayers, the doubters, writing everything off, and we still hear that today with even on the business front, we don't have that attitude. Our family, our business people here, our partnerships and things. And Alligator Blood, after 834 days in the wilderness, with that belief that we had in him, came home and won the Group 1 Stradbroke, which is the premiership race in Queensland racing going back to 1890. So that leads me into the Never Give Up spirit team of we are back big time. Lots to talk about now to dig deep into all things ZuCoins. So let's kick off with this. Wallets have been sensational. The team has been working around the clock, and I'm delighted to say that the first portal, which is the wallet download capability, Robert had even improved on that, and it's almost as bulletproof as you can get in terms of getting a wallet and downloading it on your iPhone or your Android in very simplistic terms, where we know we can achieve that mass distribution of wallets. That has been absolutely phenomenal and successful. Could not have asked for anything better on that front. We then followed through the roadmap, everybody, which we said that we wanted to make sure that the backup and restore functionalities were in place. That has been achieved. And I'm delighted to say that those patient people who obviously been practicing with the backup and restore functions put their hands up. They've ticked the disclaimer box that they're prepared to receive their coins through the team. We've got members within the team that go one-on-one, and there's a reason for that, because we're keeping an audit trail to make sure that if you have ticked the box that you know what you're doing, that's with the backup and restore, that you're comfortable that the coins are in your hands, that they're your responsibility. We've shifted that to you. That means that you're prepared to have received your coins, and the time locking system has been working sensationally. It hits the target, both sender and receiver. And as an objective, I'm just delighted that people haven't been losing their coins on the send and receive, and certainly understand the simplicity of the backup and restore. Now, I should say a couple of things about the backup and restore, and that is that it's unencrypted. Some questions have been asked about that. So there is a reason for that, because the moment we start to put processes in place to encrypt any of that data within the wallet, we start to deviate from our global objective of decentralization that I talk about, which is this blockchain trilemma, which is your security, your speed, and scalability. So we haven't done that. It's left as an unencrypted file, which you can back up to your phone in the first instance. You can certainly get a plug-in USB directly into your phone. You can transfer that file unencrypted back to your hard drives, your computer by email. And the purpose is it's up to you. Your responsibility to ensure the integrity of that backup is protected and maximized by the research that you do to make sure that happens. And by doing that, we continue with our mandate that we're not involved as we unleash both the wallet and also the software codes for the nodes, which I'll talk about in a minute, in that regard. So on the back of that, I'm delighted to report that the support team have now pushed out 10,109,297 coins, ZuCoins, to the recipients, those that were the ZuCoin buyers. And by the end of next week, that will hit 21.5 million ZuCoins. So we're tracking nicely now on the roadmap. I'd invite everybody to go to the roadmap. Hasn't been any changes on that since I last spoke to you. So, and I'll go through more of the other components that we're completing, but certainly unbelievable, phenomenal response from those that now understand the work that we've done to achieve the success of this time locking system, which is almost two-factor authentication between the sender and the receiver. Now, of course, it's been a long journey because, originally I would go back and certainly discuss and talk about on previous ZuTime about the transactions being instant, and they were at the time. There's no question of that. We had it down to a fine art in terms of sending it using the phone SMS where you can instant wallet and you get the coins, but the failure rate was too high and too much risk that we're acting in the interest of our ZuCoin buyers to make sure they have the best opportunity to receive their coins and preserve them without loss. So what we talk about is these are, in that 90-second lock, is real-time transactions. And I can tell you now, we could bring that 90-second lock down to 5 seconds if we so wished, before we release the open source code. But we've found that this is the best opportunity that people now understand that they can work with elderly people, grandparents and so forth, or younger people that have now got the capability to understand, even with timeouts and breakdowns in terms of the internet connections or your phone connection, this works superbly. So that's the big tick. So those coins, everybody, congratulations. There's far more going out, as I said, and we'll have that wrapped up that all, if you're comfortable with the backup and the restore, get used to it, trial it. If you lose the wallet, you can get an instant wallet and back it and restore it back to that new wallet. All your current data that you back up is in play, and that means you've got your address, your wallet address, your private keys contained in that, certainly your contacts, and certainly your transaction history. Now, some people have found that when they've restored, not all the transaction history comes up, and there's good reason for that, because if you back up right now, all your transaction histories is backed up. If you don't back up and you do another 10 transactions and you lose the wallet, don't panic, because the nodes and the network, which is caching the last couple of transactions, which is the validation process of the system, picks it up, makes sure that you're in the network with the balance you have, and does an adjusting entry, which you'll see in yellow. So it's a phenomenal system that means as long as you've got one backup and you've got that tucked away, you'll always be able to re-enter the network, and you'll certainly be able to restore at least the balance that you are holding that's validated by the network, and that adjusting entry. So it's absolutely perfect. It works brilliant. We've deliberately deleted wallets and messed around with it, and same with those people that have panicked because they think they've lost their wallet. So it's all good, really good, exciting stuff. If I go through now, everybody, the roadmap, I just want to quickly touch on a couple of things there. So we're into the phase, obviously, delivering on time is all the ZuCoin buyers, the coins that have been acquired, and that's tracking nicely, as you'll see on the roadmap. The three areas that we're now into the thick of is the ZuBot, of course. Now that's the bridge, the connector, and that's the component that links the wallets, if you like, into and interacts with the exchanges, and that's what we're fully into now. So if you look at that, these items are all targeted around moving towards as close to the September 17, which is the launch. In terms of the launch, that's where we'll all be for the crypto convention on the Gold Coast. So you've been notified of that. So the ZuBot, well and truly being put together by Robert, organised, and that is a self-contained code, if you like, that's an opportunity for the exchanges. It's open source, and it also means that it can connect to other. We can't stop people as merchants or anybody else that want to use it in terms of accepting crypto or ZuCoins in this instance as part of their programs themselves as merchants. So that's the second bit is the exchanges, and look at the timelines there. That is our Busy Beaver program. And the last item, which is important, is as we start to move forward now with the nodes and the nodes scalability. You'll see that on the roadmap. That's a big component. Now, some people have said, and there's a bit of humour going on out there in the internet land, that there's Cloudflare at the front, et cetera, et cetera. Well, of course, there is at the instance. I mean, you start, you start with one node, and then you propagate so that you would end up with thousands and thousands of nodes that form part and parcel of the decentralization in terms of the rollout. So we have had Cloudflare as an opportunity to sort of create a barrier between the node addresses that we have underneath, and certainly that prevents until full propagation. That prevents things like DDoS attacks or attacks on the network as well. Now, people don't quite understand that you've got to start somewhere as you're pushing out, because the nodes are really computers that have got the last two transactions caching that allows the network to search as the peers interact with each other. You're looking for that truth that then the nodes are able to deliver. And of course, with the delivery of that is the the decentralization of the system in relation to the whole product. So from that point of view, I was interested that I went back and did a bit of research in terms of Bitcoin itself. Now, on the 8th of January, Thursday, 2009, the great man or woman or people or group, Satoshi Nakamoto, sent an email. Just thought I'd highlight that. You can look up yourself and have a bit of a squiz. And it's interesting what he wrote, because he didn't give a great lot of thought at the end of the day to the way in which the nodes or the miners would propagate, even though we see today that we have listening nodes and we have nodes there from a miner's perspective. And you can do your own homework on that. Some sites say there's 16,000 nodes out there. Some say there's 100,000, depending on the way in which it's operating with other people wanting to get on board to mine Bitcoins. But I'll just read you a line here, and he says, this was an email to the very first person that was going to receive a Bitcoin and test the whole network, which was to Hal Finney, rest in peace. And he said, if you can keep a node running that accepts incoming connections, you'll really be helping the network a lot. Now, it's not a definitive statement as to how he's creating that network through the nodes. It's an if you can keep the node running. So that was the beginning of Bitcoin. If you can keep it running. He didn't have a sort of a roadmap model that said this is what the outcomes will be, because the issues weren't resolved at the time. So one node. Now, one node turned into two nodes as soon as Hal downloaded the code and had it running, and it was activated. There were two nodes. Now, that's not decentralization. That's just two nodes until it exploded and propagated across the network. And his conclusion was that they'll receive the transaction the next time they connect and get into the block, because it's a useful alternative if both users aren't online at the same time or the recipient can't receive incoming connections. So he wasn't even sure about the continuity in terms of the nodes, or if the peers are offline, as to actually what will happen, other than they'll get back into the block and the transaction will rectify itself through the next process. But what he does say, that the system, it's based on open market competition, and there will probably always be nodes willing to process the transactions. So it's not a definitive business strategy. There was nothing in it other than saying, let's hope it all works. Now, as you know, Bitcoin has exploded. The growth of nodes or miners has taken off. There's an incentive program, and away you go. So we have a definitive plan, which we're excited about, in terms of the propagation of our nodes and how that'll explode across the planet. You don't need Cloudflare. For those rookies out there, that's not the intention of what that's about. It's about making sure that the rollout that we do is picture perfect, so that we can see the explosion across, as I've talked about in the past, mass distribution of wallets, the ease of the transactions, and for you guys and all of those that get involved with ZuCoins, maximizing the protection from the moment you want to send a coin and receive to the moment that the network's scalability is capable of that, and the way in which you back up and restore, so that you don't have this fear factor that you can see happening around the world with some of the coins. Now, that leads me into, that's the roadmaps, everybody. Just revisit that on zucoins.com, and we're tracking beautifully on that front. And of course, there's also the fourth element there, which is about the marketing. That hasn't changed. We have in play the relationships as a result of the exchanges, and a couple of others that will certainly give us the ability to push out and maximize the number of wallets in the marketplace with some fractions. And obviously 1 million wallets will have one coin in them as well. So that hasn't changed. But if you look at what's happened, in this last 64 days or more, it's just been turmoil after turmoil. Now, I'm not a prophet here, but I can certainly say that if you go back to my ZuTime, previous versions and episodes rather, I talked a lot about the things that I saw, what I've seen in my life journey happening again. I talked about the 87 crash. I've talked about the shares, interest rates rising. I've talked about the banking system as per se. I've talked about the way in which we've had these bubbles. Now, it's going to happen again, and it's happening now. You've got a perfect storm. The governments, the banks, you've got massive debts across the world. Pandemic hasn't helped. You've got rising interest rates. Unemployment's next. Property crash comes along. And of course, the mainstream media continues to hone in and focus on as though the crypto is the only thing in the world that's collapsing. Now, I've only ever said that if you get the tech right, which is what we're doing, and that's the coins, I've only ever said we're comparing ourselves with the most preeminent crypto, which is Bitcoin, for all those good reasons. But it does have its deficiencies. So when you see these collapses and you see these things happening with these, the exchanges, and you see these things happening, we're getting better deals, by the way, but you see all these things that are happening, you realize that it's not a bad thing, because it's just like the share market, and it's like all the bubbles in history. Now, I love history. If you go back since 1854, everybody, there's been 34 booms and busts. We don't learn. And it's going to happen again. 1854. So we had the railways, booms and busts in the 1840s. We had gold and steel in the 1890s. Cars, 1920. Radios, TVs in 1940. Transistor electronics, home computers in 1980. The dot-com bubble, booming time, loose money, way they went. But if you follow it through, even with the GFC and real estate, crypto in 2018 and what we're seeing now with the share market, it's a wonderful time, because what it does, it's a cleansing. It's a bit of therapy. If you look at the dot-com bubble in 2000, the best thing that came out of that was it cleaned out a whole lot of mess, and it left the strongest to survive. Your Amazons, your Googles, back then Facebook, of course. But these were companies that had risen out of nothing. And it's going to happen with the crypto. If there's 8,000, 19,000 ridiculous coins out there doing nothing, then of course it's a cleansing. Well, we want to rise above that and put to the market how exciting we've done. Now, in presentations that the team has debriefed me on, the marketing side, and partnerships that partnerships is a bit strong, but certainly relationships that we've built now in relation to the contracts that we're entering into. The greatest thing that happened was the time lock, because the time lock gave absolute certainty of transaction between sender and receiver. It's phenomenal. You can't lose your coin. The backup and restore is even better. It's so simple that you don't need to be a mathematical genius to be doing what we put in play, and we've done it for good reason, because that's the way to get mass adoption. That's the way to take Bitcoin on, which is what we're doing. So all of this chatter and thing that goes on is not a bad thing, because we want to be part of that next generational growth of the new technology, next generation crypto, ZuCoins. Now, of course, in all of the panic of that, next thing that comes along, which has been historically the same thing going back to in all those days, is that you then have to have an uplift from the regulators. Now, I've talked about the regulators. That's not a bad thing. The regulators need to be put in play, because even now, ZuCoins, which we say, please just stick to the official emails and the official site for information and what you're looking at in terms of what we provide. If you have any questions or queries, always come back to the support team here, or look at the information we're posting. I mean, the tutorials are fantastic, for example. Don't go looking for another tutorial, because it's not going to be exactly what we're saying is working in the system. Now, even now, I've had to refer a matter of a scams in relation to ZuCoins itself, breaches of trademarks and products that we're doing, and I've referred that to ASIC, the Australian Securities Investment Commission, as well. Now, in doing their job, it's important that, particularly in this space, that ASIC certainly looks at all things crypto, because we don't want what's happened, massive scams that have been going on, fraudulent transactions, both in terms of trying to use our brands and names, and also ZuCoins itself. Now, in recent times, we've got, as per it's doing its role, is ASIC to ensure that ZuCoins is compliant as well. So it's reviewing and looking at what we're doing, as it should be doing with all cryptos. Now, it's interesting. I just picked this up. The team gave it to me, but on the 6th of April, 2022, there was a bit of an insight as to the way in which this world is evolving, because you've seen that, $2 trillion has been wiped out in terms of crypto values globally. Now, there's a lot of value that's been wiped out in the share market, by the way, and there'll be a lot more that's happening with property. So it's just one asset class that's been hit. But nevertheless, this was a paper that you can look up. It was presented by Kathy Amour from the Australian Securities Investment Commission before the Australian Financial Review Cryptocurrency Summit. Now, a couple of the takeaways out of this is important, which is why we as ZuCoins welcome any consideration of what we're doing at ZuCoins as well, because we're front and center. So she says, the world of crypto assets is evolving at a lightning pace, and particularly into the financial services space. As a financial services and markets regulator, ASIC needs to remain nimble and consider new and innovative products and services. That's important, and we welcome that. ZuCoins is certainly one of the great innovation products that's moving forward. She then goes on to say that ASIC's vision is to ensure a fair, strong, and efficient financial system for all Australians. This includes crypto asset financial products, and they continue to attract our attention. Anybody that's putting up cryptos is on the radar. No exclusions, including of ZuCoins. Our role is to balance innovation, at the same time monitor and uphold market integrity, and to protect consumers. We administer the regulatory regime currently in place. The extent to which our regulatory regime applies to crypto assets, investment products, depends on whether they fit into the legal framework for financial products and services. Now, in terms of ZuCoins, we've had our legal advisors, you've seen all that. We rest on the position that we're not here providing financial services businesses. That's been clear. We say through that legal advisors, of course, that the coin you are buying is like a commodity. There's no pooling of monies. There's nothing that you're doing as an investment. It's never been an investment, and it's expressly talked about that in the purchase, which I just want to make that clear for everybody. It's not a financial product as far as our legal advisors are concerned. So if you look at the platform objectives, plus the rollouts that we talk about, the stage now is important with the ZuBot as well as it is with the nodes, is crucial, because we're here to make sure that at the end of the day, I, like you, are nothing more than, through my trusts, I'll make that point, I, like you, are ZuCoin holders. And with that, that's why both the wallet codes and the node and the bots are open source, because the proposition is that everybody in the world can embrace the platform and use it as they see how they want to use it. Whether it's UDAs that I've talked about, or whether they want to create their own product lines, it's a matter for the market. Which means that in that sense, it's not something that's tied to the financial systems in things like non-cash payment facilities. So we're comfortable that ZuCoins has put itself front and center to make sure that it's a product that we are acting in your interest as we pre-launch with what we're doing, to protect as much as we can, because it'll be open slather. And there's people out there that are already trying to use our brands, use the ZuCoin name, twist it and change it. In fact, we registered not that long ago with trademarks ZuCoin.com to protect that, because people were getting sucked into things that were nothing to do with us, in exchanging Ethereum and Bitcoin and all sorts of things that were happening. You know who you're going to be dealing with as an owner of a ZuCoin wallet, and the transaction by the system that we have created. And that's the preservation and protection of that. So I'm excited that we stand out above the rest, and more than happy in terms of the way in which we go about our business to deliver what we've said we're going to deliver. And I think you'll find that the sharing of the wallet has exploded, because people are really starting to hook onto and what we wanted. That is the fractions. There's no transaction fees, and the way in which that locks in. So it's pretty powerful stuff. And that's the response we're getting back from even the bigger players now. They can get certainty on who they're dealing with as those transactions are taking place, that you can't lose them. So I just thought I'd touch on that last bit about this, we talk about the commodity, which is what it is, and that's where it circles back to, do your own homework on the tax angle. Pay your tax because it's a CGT issue. It's a capital gains tax if you decide to sell, and just be conscious of that because you can pull the rate down effective to 24 cents on the dollar, holding it on 12 months, as long as you're not trading it. So, but you'll get your own advice on that. You'll get your own accountant's advice as to what to do as you get closer to the exchanges and what you want to do into the marketplace with any sales that you want to do. So that's fine. But of course, if you think about it this way, people have asked me, how do I think about what I'm owning? Well, it's a bit like going in and buying a Mercedes-Benz car. Now, you pay big dollars for the car and you drive it around. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you have any involvement or input with Mercedes-Benz, the company, to receive anything that they make, whether it's to do with their shares and dividends or profits, nothing. You've got absolutely zip involvement in what Mercedes as a corporation is doing, with how it manages or production lines or cars or any of those sort of things. You own the Mercedes-Benz car. And in fact, you don't even need to take it back to Mercedes-Benz to get it serviced. They encourage you to do that, but if they're too expensive, you just go to another mechanic. So it's open as to what you own. And how you look after that vehicle is the crucial bit. If you're inclined to clean it, you're inclined to look after it, you don't want to see it damaged, you change the wheels, you've got all your oil and grease, etc. that's done, your electronics, that's your responsibility. And that's what we've been trying to press a lot about ZuCoins. Once you've got them, it's your responsibility. There's no central codes. We can't replace anything. We can't look at the private keys. You lose them, you lose them. It's not like a bank where the bank will give you a refund and flag that something may be a scam and give you a refund as a result of that. There's none of that. But that's the opportunity of where crypto's heading. This is the exciting part, ladies and gentlemen, of cleaning out this industry big time and bring on the regulation. I mean, that's important. That's what the global organizations are looking at now, and that's what they'll do. And I flagged this in my It's ZuTime earlier episodes, particularly the banking industry. And just on that, by the way, have a think about this. Recently, as in 2 days ago, CNN, Beijing, announced that the Chinese authorities, through their banking controls, froze 400,000 people's bank accounts. 400,000. And they said it's the tip of the iceberg. Why? We don't know why. They're not giving full information. Can you imagine that? 400,000 bank accounts frozen. Now, that's a warning signal across your bow about where the financial institutions are going. Now, the banks here in Australia, the top four, think they have this role where the government has outsourced its regulation in relation to AML KYC. Now, I get it. We all want to know exactly the sourcing of monies from the criminal elements and all the things that we have. Austrac, who also we're talking to, in relation to whether we're not providing a currency exchange, by the way, a digital exchange, but we're working with that. But certainly the AML KYC, A, it's important, but B, the government's handballed this job so that the banks become the regulator. The banks have become judge and jury. So the stories we've heard from people that have had their bank accounts frozen is incredible. Now, interestingly, under the Australian Constitution and the cases that you see that fall behind that, banking is defined as providing a banking service. Since when did the banks become the regulator? Now, if there's a problem with an account, no matter what it is, and I understand they want to protect our interests because somewhere out there may be a fraud or a scam, that's wonderful, fantastic. But they don't give you any reasons. They say they can close the accounts for no reason. That's not the bank's role. And that's what's now happening. It starts in countries like China where there's an authoritarian capacity to allow them to stop people accessing their funds. So the decentralised world of finance will go another level because people want the constitution, they want the laws, the democracies that we're used to be able to come into play. It's your money. Now, if there is a problem The normal processes going back many, many years ago was that the police may get involved, the AFP, the appropriate regulators, and they would go to the court to seek warrants, etc., to get the courts to decide judicially as to whether or not that particular person or their accounts should be frozen because there's an allegation. And it's extraordinary that the banks make that decision. You can see where I'm going. We've got a constitution based on the separation of powers, and it's all been lumped into one big kettle. Interesting days ahead, ladies and gentlemen. The warning signs are there, big time. So on the flip side, protect your ZuCoins, your responsibility. You can put them on USBs. You can do what you like. You're still in a position to maintain and report appropriately to the authorities as to A, where you might have got the coins, and B, the taxes payable, etc., etc. That it's not coming in from some breach in relation to AML KYC, and away you go. So I just wanted to flag that the journey we're heading into is pretty exciting stuff, but at the same time, just be conscious and be aware of the things that are around you. You can look these things up. You can see them on the search engines, and it's happening in all jurisdictions. I mean, I highlighted last time in Canada, just because you were a truckie and went on a protest, they decided to freeze the truckies' accounts. So think about that. The freedom of transaction. I mean, you've got to remember there is another section of our Constitution, Section 92, that says the freedom of trade. Well, if you get a frozen bank account, just tell me how you're meant to be freely trading without the banks being in breach of Section 92. So that's interesting as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just flagged that we any questions on what's happening to date? We are well and truly right in the thick of things on a number of fronts. We're tracking on our roadmap. It's been overwhelming, the commentary coming into support about how happy people are with the system that's now been built and perfected. We've had zero issues at the back end in terms of the transactions themselves. People are getting used to the code. When they say that we've got people that we've asked people to do a couple of things, that is, some people don't bother reading their emails. You've got to read your emails because there are boxes to tick. If you want your coins, there's a box to tick because we will have and have got the staff. That's why there's this total of 21.5 million be completed by the end of next week. You will be in a list if you tick the box to get them because we're dealing one-on-one to get the coins out. And there's a reason, because we've got a full audit trail that we're taking photo shots of the receipt and the sends. We're putting that into an audit packet, and that means that there's no comeback by people saying that they were scammed or didn't receive their coins or that they themselves have lost them. Now, if you haven't got those emails, send to support@zucoins.com that you're comfortable, you request the transfer, and you're in the batches. It's no issue. You're in the batch, and away you go. You'll be assigned a particular person, and they will contact you directly by phone in order to process, of which we keep that record so that we know we have had the deliverable. And this is exactly what we talked about if you look at the roadmap. Now, there's also another form that went out, and that was the one that said, we want you to make sure that you were able to back up and restore, because if you don't do that, that's the end of it. You'll lose your coins. Now, once you're comfortable with that, there was a form to tick the box that said, yes, I understand I can do my backup and restore, and I waive all my rights against ZuCoins because I want my coins and I know what I'm doing. So if you haven't got those, follow that up. Send an email or read your emails. We've had some people that have ticked the box and said, yes, I've done the backup and restore. And guess what? They hadn't. But luckily, they lost some of their bonus coins. Now, the flip side of that is, if there's people out there that have paid for that commodity, which they have, some of them are part of our marketing strategies, which we've had some free coins out there, and we've had some discounted ones because that's part of the rollout that I'm doing, which is in the tokenization flow charts that I've put out in the past. You can see that. But those people, there's no turning back. Some people have said that they've done it and they actually hadn't, and then were embarrassed. They were embarrassed because they actually lied and said that they'd completed the processes and then they wondered why they lost those coins. Now, the good news is, if that does happen, those of you that know what you're doing and have understood and followed the tutorials and the videos, we don't produce them for the hell of it. We produce them because we want people to see them. And some of the YouTube sites are already producing nonsense videos that are absolutely quite disgraceful, really, because they're sending you false messages and misleading material about things that are to your advantage as to what we've built if you look at the tutorials. Okay, the time locks are important. As I said, that process is important. If a transaction doesn't happen, it doesn't happen for good reason, because you may have run out of battery power. The connection to the internet dropped out. Anything could happen, but you won't lose the transaction or the coin. That's the point. So, by all means, keep pushing into support at ZuCoins.com that you're ready, you're in the list, and just be patient, because those batches are all flowing out, as I said. Just to recap, a final recap, 10,109,297 ZuCoins have gone out. And by the end of next week, we will have 21.5 million and nearly completion in terms of the rollouts according to the schedule, where everybody will have been personally contacted and delivered the coins as promised. While we are busy with the ZuBot and our roadmap on the nodes, scalability of nodes, as well as, of course, the marketing strategies. So, back in the main saddle, everybody. It's been an absolute delight and pleasure. It's given me an opportunity to refocus, and I've got a wish list there that my beloved wife wanted me to complete. I mentioned it earlier. I'll say it again. The litigation that I'm involved with is hotting up. I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to globalize ZuCoins that she wanted to see delivered, and those things will happen. So, cheers, everybody. Have a great evening. It's been wonderful, and we'll have the team coming back with lots more updates. Keep an eye out for your emails, and just start to transact those wallets, because it's absolutely sensational. It's going to be a big time ahead of us. And forget about all that chatter out there and the internet and what's happening with crypto crashes. It's a good thing. It gives us 19,000 competitors less to worry about. Cheers, everybody. Have a great time.